Hey friends, it's Jeff. We're entering a new season. We have started 4 new podcasts on this channel and are working on our second book and hoping to elevate more voices in the Enneagram world over the coming year. If these episodes are important to you, there's 3 things you can do for us. First, you can buy a copy of our first book, Around the Circle, on Amazon for yourself and your 10 closest friends for Christmas. Second, you can review that book or our podcast with a note, 5 stars. This really helps people find our feed. And best of all, you can go sign up as a member at aroundthecircle.org. Even free members get half of the stuff that we post there. So go. Books, stars, memberships. This will allow us to create great content for years to come. Appreciate all you all. Appreciate your notes of encouragement, and may all good things be yours.
Does that mean I'm not going to care about these? But no, it doesn't mean that at all. That's a given. You got that part handled, darling. You have that in spades more than most people. But this other bit is going to make that all sweeter, more beautiful, more effective, and make you a more fulfilled human being.
I would love to push into that. I think that's a brilliant observation. So I've been playing with stress, the low side of stress recently, and what strikes me is an Aristotelian category, which is deficiency. That in stress at the low side, our type experiences a deficiency of our primary center.
Yes.
So for a 1, I move to 4 and I abandon my body in 4 space.
Right.
Because I am thinking about my emotions in that space and there's a deficiency of my center.
Yes.
What I'm hearing there as the fear of the opposition, which I think is spot on, is I hate going into stress. And I don't know if that's unique to ones, but I despise going into 4 space and I fear that elements is if I go over into this 4 space, then I'm going to give up the thing, my one side is what I heard there.
Yeah. This is
thoughts on that.
Sure. This is where the Enneagram without the levels doesn't make a whole hill of beans of sense to me. Don Risa's observation, and whether you break them down specifically into 9, the way he did so beautifully, it's just the idea that where you are in the thermometer makes a difference. Usually when you're going into stress, you're not doing great in your own type. And you move over to that other position at the same level that you were in. Because going up or down the level is a function of presence, self-awareness, being able to be with your difficulties, to metabolize them in a sense. So if you're down level 6, level 7, you're having a pretty bad time. You go over to 4, it's no picnic. It's pretty awful. And it does feel like a self-abandonment because that's what that point is all about at that stage.
Yes.
Right? So, and then it sort of becomes a kind of a flaming sword because you say, I don't want to go in that direction because that's what's going to happen. But actually, you went there because there's a secret ingredient there that you actually need. And this is Jungian shadow work we're talking about here. There's something in that 4 that I'm missing out on when I'm taking my 1 stance. And what is that? And you only find that out when you go over there from more presence and a healthy side. I always tell ones, you guys got a lot of grief to deal with. Got a lot of sadness. And it's not just self-pity, which is what you would think it is at first. And ones don't have a lot of time for self-pity generally. It's not an attractive trait in self or others from the 1 stance. But having mercy toward your journey, your struggles, what you've been through, beginning to really see the struggles of other people deepens a kind of respect and dignity for the human condition that takes that sense of moral alignment that is organic in one and gives it the wings it needs to reach its real purpose and to touch other people and all the other things that I know ones care about. So I say to people, you can say a lot about ones, but you can't say they don't care.
I think there's a lot of wisdom. I'm going to throw it to you in a second, Teach. There's a lot of wisdom there in terms of the opposite, the high side of one's stress move is what I hear in your language there. The equanimity that ones can grab in force space does give that approach of what you're picturing, which I fully support and think is wise. What's your thoughts, Teach?
Well, yeah, we have done a lot of conversation about high side, low side, and we don't get into the multiple layers as much. We have talked about them a lot, but part of what we believe and teach is that when you are moving into stress from an unhealthy place, you grab onto the unhealthy things that are at your stress move, and when you're doing it with that presence, with awareness, intentionally, you can grab onto the really good things that are available for you.
That's right.
Things that you need that will help keep you alive, and I think that the awareness that our own perspective of the stress point has to do with our level of health. Like it like looking at our stress move is informed by where we are on that scale of health. Like if we're really unhealthy, I think that like not universally, not 100% of the time, but like that look to the stress move is going to look scary, is going to look like all of the bad things that are there. And the more time we spend on that movement, on developing our presence, on trying to see the healthy sides of that stress move, the perspective itself has to do with our own health.
Yes. And it's like all these things, it's not simple and causative in the way we might prefer. There's as we're seeing this theme over and over in all the things we're talking about. For example, one thing I taught people in training, something I observed and started exploring with Dawn years ago, was a phenomenon we call shunting, which is where when we're traumatized or overwhelmed by problems beyond the capacity for our usual personality defenses to handle, we're kind of broadsided, overwhelmed, we can start to plummet down the levels of our primary type. To stop the fall, people will sometimes shunt over to their stress point and stay there for a long time. So I met a lot of ones that initially presented as fours. They were depressed, demoralized, disillusioned, sad, not feeling empowered to do anything. And yet I would talk with them. They worked for the Peace Corps in Africa. This was not a 4 resume. This was a 1 resume. And then we started to get in touch with, they lost their ideal. They lost their vision, and they were floundering in this. But in a sense, shunting over there was like trying to stop the complete fall into death and madness. You don't find a lot of ones who are down there in the scary, scary place of the bottom of 1. You don't see that many. Not a lot of Savonarolas running around. There's mostly, you'll see the other thing. I saw it in 3s. Very few 3s get down to the scary stuff at the bottom of 3. They go to 9. They're burnt out. They can't motivate themselves anymore. They're kind of flat and affectless. I saw myself going to 7. I used to use the example of the film Shine, about David Helfgott, the piano player who was a 5, and he started to have a mental breakdown. He shunted over to 7. It was like he became a different personality. So you see that a lot. That I think that even though we don't like them, the inner lines are adaptive because they contain the ingredients that will get us out of the fixated aspect of our own type. Like for me as a 5, the 7 and the 8 is the medicine I need to get out of me being this contracted, mental, detached person. And then, once the fixation is relaxed, you can start to play with the other energies. You'll always be your dominant point, but you're not imprisoned by it. That's the whole thing.
What I hear there, and this actually can bring up coping style to some effect here, is that all of us are made up of head, heart, and body.
Yeah.
And given our type, emphasize 2 of the centers. But when problems emerge, we begin to move And that's why I suppose I hear there. And that's it. In our view, what happens with coping style for you and I, Russ, we shut down our feeling center in order to solve problems. But the feeling center is my secondary center. The feeling center is your secondary center.
Right.
But it's as though a problem emerges and we say, this isn't working anymore. I'm going to see feelings as the obstacle and really push into acting on my thinking to solve the problem. And that movement of going around, of balancing between the three centers, I find fascinating. It's a lot of our work going forward is going to be on that, in that space. But that's what I hear as you're talking about that shift into your stress move. Again, it feels like I'm cutting off for nearly every type except for 4s and 5s. And so perhaps we could talk about this since you are a 5. But the move, the stress move is abandoning your primary center for every other type. And worth naming and talking about on that front. But of all things, since you're here and an expert, I would love to talk about how that works for 5s, because it seems like for 5s, it moves from being internally your reference to your mind explodes, and we get much more external.
Yes, and you start running around. I think it's like, I used to say that when we feel overcooked in some feature of our primary type, that our stress point is like a overcompensation. Like we did that too much. We went way too far this way. Now it's going to spring over too far this way. And so you're right. In many of the types, it's a shift of focus of centers. I'm always quick to respond to people. I'm not one of these that thinks, oh, you have to go to 2 to get a heart. No, all 9 types have all 3 centers in them. People have all 3 centers in them. You have to go over there to buy a center. It's not that kind of game. But people, get a little too clever with all this sometimes. I think that, but going back to your point, when as 5, I think the issue isn't solely being cerebral, because indeed I do go to 7, but it's the internal focus, it's the contraction. I get contracted. The counterbalance is it's like a jack in the box. Suddenly, I'm popping out and going a little nuts. And I had plenty of, living here in New York City, I had plenty of opportunity to observe that behavior in me. Oh my goodness. I used to say the warning sign was the number of books that started to accumulate on my nightstand that I had read a little bit of. I said, I think you're going into 7 a little bit, Russ, and not the good side. But I need the high side of 7. You probably heard me talk about, I used to say you need the integration point, the heart point, to break away from the fixation and to become more of a high functioning ego with all the good stuff of your type. But really integrating the high side of your stress point gives you a freedom from being an ego. In other words, you start to experience what you are beyond your self-concept, beyond your ego. So for me, the grim, cynical, life is a dark journey, 5, to really realize 7, inner freedom, positivity for no reason, light, love, all that. What? And I used to say, we're always cynical about that one. We don't like it until we get what it really is. We are actually defended against it. Part of that, I think, the cynicism is the mind defending the heart from further hurt and disappointment. In that way lie dragons, so I'm not going over there. So as a 5, I'd see people being joyful and dancing, and I just feel contempt for them. I don't want to be like those idiots, and my fellow 5s can probably relate, people singing cheerful songs or whatever. Get out of here with that stuff. But see, that's the 7 fixation. That's the 792 positive outlook thing. Not me. But then I realized, oh no, they're actually right about that. On a deeper level. When I almost died last year, I was in the hospital with sepsis, and I went into a death space. I had kind of a near-death experience, and what I found was exactly what I thought didn't exist. Just a timeless space of holding, tenderness, positivity, Like there was no figures there, no beings. That's just that. And I came out of it and I said, whoa, I was even more wrong than I thought, you know? So there's some sense in which if you're conscious of this, is why we learn something like the Enneagram. There is the opportunity to say, okay, I'm cynical about that. What is going on? What am I fearing? How was I disappointed? What is the gold in that for my liberation? And then you start to see it. For example, we're talking about 1, use that example. If you look on either side of 1, 7 and 4, they're probably the 2 most spontaneous types in the Enneagram. They're least likely to have a coherent, linear approach to anything. It's not their way. And yet here you are, 1, you're kind of triangulated by those 2 because they need you. They need what you got. They have some sort of order and orientation in their life. But both of them lead you out of the sense that you've already gotten or certain about this is how it all works. And that restores the curiosity, the orientation to wisdom, the going to new discovery, which I think is very close to the heart of every one I've found. It's just like we all get trained out of that in some sense. So, and for me as a 5, it's as I said, the 7, or you get a 2. That's a very counterintuitive one. 2, it's the 8. And the 2s, look at those 8. Those are troublemakers. Those are selfish people. Those are big know-it-alls. They're all kind of control everything. I don't want to be like that. Well, it's also being empowered, having your own human dignity, not giving yourself away. And the other thing I have taught that I think is relevant is the realization of the highest side of the stress point is the portal into the holy ideas. And people go, what? Say what? I said, well, you got to think about the holy ideas. For example, for 2, you're so present that you realize all your relationships are made up and in your head. Only real relationship is you being with whoever or whatever is here in this moment as you. It doesn't even have to be immediate, but it's what's here now. There is nothing else that's except your imagination or your memory. That's very daunting for both people, but you look at the greatly realized, liberated souls, that's what they're talking about. It is the realization of love rather than the limitation. I used to say it's the end of being ruled by object relations, to put it in psychological terms. But, that's not something a regular person is going to do after a few workshops. That's like a lifetime of work to get to those kind of realizations, but they're possible. And so I have to, when we're looking at this, people want to know a little bit. The 6 in all of us wants to know what's ahead on the road. What might I encounter? And to go back to what we were saying, all this stuff seems daunting, weird, and or scary until we explore it a little bit. And then we see it's actually what we wanted so much we didn't want it anymore. There's some kind of home base there, some kind of denouement, kind of some sort of rounding out of our journey in those realizations.
That's teach.
Still processing. That was a lot. Yeah.
The thing that's hitting me as you're talking, and it's probably why this would appeal, I assume would appeal to both of you, is the focus on presence strikes me as something that both of you all will gain a little bit more when you're moving into security, but especially you, Russ, that presence ends up being what I see with 5s who getting into their bodies, how that transforms them in my experience. I suppose as I come to the material, as you're talking, like I am inclined, one that I am, I'm all present. And to use your language, I'm resistant to the present.
Both.
But to get into the present moment for me and to even engage some of the high sides of 4 and 7 and 1, it takes a lot of mental focus. How are you thinking about security moves recently? What are the sort of things that come to your mind and heart since you published that book?
Yeah. Well, a lot actually. I think the aim always is to have our three centers activated and aligned. Just shuffling them around doesn't get you too far, as we eventually learn through experientially. There are shifts and so forth, but the aim is to wisdom comes through all three centers. One centered wisdom is right about a third of the time on a good day. You can feel something in your gut and be dead wrong. And with your mind and emotions, of course. So we're trying to get a kind of inner alignment. One of the ways Gurdjieff used to talk about it is that he said that the centers are imbalanced. And so when I put out that theory of the imbalance of the centers that has become quite popular, I had to find that Hurley and Donson independently, Kathy Hurley and Theodore Donson independently came to a similar perspective. But it came from me being in the Gurdjieff work. And my teacher told me, I suggested to him that the Enneagram fixations or the Enneagram points were like Gurdjieff's idea of chief feature. And chief feature described as that which spoils your life. And that's the fixation of the type, not the type energy itself. Those are two different things. He also said that a chief feature could be thought of as a chief imbalance, and think of imbalance of centers. So then I sat down and worked this all out, and that's what came out. But the idea is that as you presence each center, they start to communicate. They're locked into a certain relationship when we're not present. Presence is the only medium, the place in which the different energies, intelligences can coalesce, come together, and fuse into a more coherent orientation to reality. I think each type holds a piece of that wisdom. Going back to one knows in some wordless way we're supposed to be in some alignment and orientation. And when we're off, I sure as hell feel it. Right? So there's something intuitively in me that knows that. Not sure how to get there. And so we're trying to figure it out on a mental level. But it's something that comes from learning to be present in each of the centers. Gurdjieff said that when we start to presence those centers, they line up. And then the higher centers, the source of the virtues and the holy ideas and the essence qualities, can start to pour in. And then he said, it's like all your spiritual experiences get integrated then, instead of being happy memories of a groovy time back in 1999 when I saw the light. It's so, that made a ton of sense to me, and it is congruent with my experience. He used to say that our self is like a great house in disorder. Have you ever heard that story? Where, this like a mansion or a palace, and the chauffeur is gardening, and the gardener is making the meals, and the cook is cleaning up the place, and everything's kind of messed up. Everything's doing the wrong job. We're trying to think with our feelings. That's America, by the way. Yeah. And we're trying to feel with our instincts, or it's all mixed up. That's the imbalance of centers. He said there has to be an agreement that gets the different parties, the different components of the psyche, the different servants, to do their correct job. And as they get the house in order, the master of the house can return. And then there's this organic development of what we are. I'm always telling people this isn't about just refining who you think you are. It's more metamorphic than that. It's more like the caterpillar, cocoon, butterfly situation than it is like, polishing your self-concepts. So, the whole sense of, I think, first just finding the centers. I see a lot of people don't really get this in the Enneagram. Oh, I need more belly centers, so I guess I'll do more stuff. The world is full of people running around like decapitated chickens who haven't been present in their body in a month of Sundays. I have coached Olympic athletes who were not present in their body and knew it. So it's not that, I need my head center. Let me read more books. No, that's not what the head center is. One of the stages of development is for people to actually taste what their centers are when they're not locked into these crazy hijinks. When we really are in our body, what's that like? When we're really in our heart, what's that like? You know, our emotional reactions are the froth on the surface. What happens when we drop down into the ocean of the heart? What happens when we see past our inner conversation into the great vast stillness of our true mind? Which doesn't mean being dull, au contraire. It's sharp, brilliant, clear, and where new ideas come from. So, you know, there's a whole journey of having people see the gap between what we take to be the centers and what they actually are. What I see a lot is people from fixation teaching about getting out of fixation in a very fixated way. So it's like,
It never
like,
happens
oh
to me.
dear. And you know, I have to be nice about it and polite, you know, and I do my best. But sometimes I'm just back to basics. And you sense your feet on the ground.
There strikes me that there's a movement, especially of people my age and slightly younger, that it's a rejection of what I hear in your language there. That would be that there is some function or good for each of the centers that as I'm listening, like the holy ideas, I think are a great characterization of this is what healthy engagement of one's mind, of one's heart, of one's body may look like. And I love categories of health. They are very prescriptive. One that I am, that's my wheelhouse, so, you know. But there is it strikes me that there's a severe pushback against prescribing health or happiness for others in Enneagram world, especially among coaches. Do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I understand that, because if you're really doing it, it doesn't come out that way. I used to tell people going to the higher levels does not necessarily mean you're going to feel better. You might get more present, find out you're enraged. You might find out that your heart has been really broken, and you finally pay the bill and sit with your sadness. It's not prescriptive in that way. And if it is, they don't understand it. I said, you don't know.
It's not comfortable, but it's healthy, yeah?
Right. All development is uncomfortable, period. Try to find...
Say that again for the 9. I'm sorry.
All development is uncomfortable. You want to learn a new language, it's not going to be easy. You want to work out and get fit, it's going to be uncomfortable. You want to get in touch with what's really going on in your psychology and your emotions, not going to be comfortable. Presence is not a good mood. Let me just say that again. Presence is not a good mood. It's not a happy ending. This is a complete misunderstanding. It is the capacity to be awake to whatever experience you're having. And I've had to really slow that down, because, you know, it can look or sound like something that it's not. And as I said, there's people trying to teach this who haven't really been there. And the other thing I'd just say, and this could come out a little snarky, but I don't mean it to be. A lot of the traditional hierarchies are crap, and I understand that, and we need to be free of them. And everybody has potential ideas. And there are things you can only learn through experience and a journey of that experience. If I want to climb a mountain, I don't want a guide who's just watched some YouTube videos about that mountain. If my child is really, really sick and I go to the doctor, I don't want somebody who just has some quick internet ideas about healing. I want a skilled, experienced doctor. To say otherwise is, I'm sorry, madness, insanity. But there's plenty of that around these days. And I just want to say the Enneagram journey, the Enneagram itself is not just this thing on its own. It sits in a context of a certain very old orientation toward human consciousness, human potential development, human difficulties, and that you need to give yourself time to really cook your experience. And then some of these concepts that you've looked at will start to make more sense. I think these days, because of the rapid display of information that we get through the internet, people think they get it long before they actually get it. They get it in a certain way, but they don't get it in the way that they can live it or understand some of the nuances that we're talking about here. And just what's often lacking for people is just patience with themselves and with the process. It's not an overnight fix. If it is, it's going to hurt later. You know,
I would love your wisdom on that. In terms of what I hear is sometimes people aren't ready for the Enneagram. It's just not your time. Like this may be a tool that's a little bit more powerful than anything you need presently, and maybe you should wait 10 years. I have the intuition that I want to get my kids into it. They're 14. We could probably type these suckers. We will know who they are and what they're motivated by. And so wise use of Enneagram occurs when?
Yeah, it's a real good question. Real good question, Jeff. I think it varies from person to person. Like you said, some people are not ready when they're 70. They just, Jung used to say some people should not have therapy. They're taped together just well enough, and if you took that tape off, they're gonna fall to pieces. And I understand what he meant by that. I've had to cultivate my orientation. All this, I think young people, some of them are ready when they're kind of in their teens, some not, and it's really a function of their level of interest. I wouldn't lay it on them. But if they really want to know about it, I'd tell them. The other thing I do when I'm working with younger people, and sometimes I do get younger people who are interested, I'm not with them doing ego reduction work. I'm not doing that because they're still developing an ego. That's what they're supposed to be doing, a coherent one. And so I use it more as a to go back to what you're saying, a kind of a mirroring of good things in them that they can develop. If I knew when I was 15, 16 years old that I was a 5, I might have suffered a good bit less because I had all these other models that I thought people were supposed to be that I knew I could never be. So there was a lot of depression, self-attack and everything because I didn't fit what was around me. But if somebody had said, but these people that you admire are more like you and you could do this or you could do that or notice this capacity, that with just a gentle dose of helping them balance out the centers. If somebody had coached me to help me find a little better relationship with my body, then that would have been helpful too. But I'm not there to help them see through their ego or get them in touch with their passion and all that stuff. Not at that age. I would also say that this is when we're facilitating, when we're teachers, it's pretty inevitable that we will come to judgments, assessments of the people that come to us, and we'll think, this is a promising student. This person's going to go there. And this one, not so much. They're pretty stuck. I don't know. I used to notice in some of the groups I was in, there were people I couldn't figure out why they were going there except as a social connection. They didn't seem to be doing the work. They didn't seem to be doing the exercise. They didn't have really anything to contribute in the groups or the classes. But I learned that you just don't know, because sometimes that person that you wrote off stands up and angelic truth comes pouring out of them. You just don't know. My Gurdjieff teacher had a pretty low opinion of me for a certain period of time, but before he passed, he apologized to me for that. He realized, he said, some of the people I put my confidence in didn't pan out, and some of the people I wrote off, including you, were the ones who went forward and did something with this. So you just don't know. I think the presence thing, one of the benefits of it is not just you get your blinders off, you get your filter turned down. And in that, you're more able to encounter who you're with and feel where they're coming from and feel how you can be with them in a way that's reciprocally supportive. And that's just such an important part of human life. But you don't get that by just putting a number on them and deciding you know what they're going to do. That's tempting. We all do it. Let's get real. But if we're really more experienced with the Enneagram, we see ourselves doing that. Say, oh, hold on there. Let's see who this human is. I realize we just don't know what people have been through, what they have conquered, what they have realized in their life. and we're all a little awkward when we first meet each other, So to just take the time to sort of say, gosh, who is this before me now? Which you have to kind of get your own fixated filter out of the way a little bit at least to do that. So, yeah. And I just, to your initial point, Jeff, I never proselytize this anymore. If somebody's interested, I'll talk with them about it. The other thing, I do not tell people what their type is anymore. Because I want them to find it for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And they get so much more out of it if they do. I used to say it's like telling, but well, have you read those Harry Potter novels? And by the way, at the end, you've ruined the journey for them.
Yeah.
You don't want to do that. Let them go on the journey. Let them find out. Part of a big part of this for me as a 5 was learning to trust reality. Trust there's intelligence here. I don't have to be the Fort Apache of intelligence, that people will realize things, figure things out. I don't have to do it for them. And to trust that we're all in some kind of process, And the best I can be a lot of times is to go back to what we're saying is to be present with them, to be there with them, really listen. Yeah. And it's not anything that ever becomes automatic. If it did, you'd be back in a fixated pattern again.
Right. Well, there's a very real sense of all of us sort of trying to control our worlds in whatever means. Like some of us withdraw and step back. Some of us earn the things that we want. Some of us take hold of the things that we want. But all of us are trying to control the uncontrollable.
Yes.
And part of what happens when we tell other people their type is we're trying to put them into a box so that we know how to control them. Part of what happens when we expect certain behavior from other people is that we're trying to control them. And so much like this idea of letting someone's inner person unfold in front of us is a beautiful microcosm of our place in the universe. Like we just do not have control over what's going on around us. And as hard as that is, part of this really good presence, this sense of coming back to our own understanding of ourself and how we interact with the world, part of that is letting the beauty of the world unfold in front of us.
Yes, absolutely.
And figuring out our own specific role in contributing to that beauty.
Yeah, it gets, it's sort of, you see, our ego, our personality, our fixated pattern tries to grasp this information and employ it, but it is not capable of doing so.
Right.
So, for example, let's say I'm working with an 8, and I've learned in the Enneagram that you need to communicate a certain way with 8s. You have to show up a certain way with the 8s. You have to, blah 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 blah. The chance of me doing that, if I'm not being present, means my fixated pattern is going to suddenly change because I learned something. On a cold day in hell, that will happen.
Right.
It doesn't happen. What will you do with your 8 friend? Exactly what you always do, because you're stuck. Yep. We always think, oh, these other people are stuck. I'm free. No, honey. You start off by seeing how you're trapping yourself. So then I might show up with my 8 friend, and then I kind of feel more of my own groundedness, my empowerment, my ability to speak truth, which my 8 friend is going to respond to. My invitation, be strong but real, and to be sensitive even as I'm being strong. In a sense, we learn to get out of the box so that we can play in these other energies. But even then, it's not contrived. It's not a manipulation. It's not, oh, I'm with an 8 now, so let me do this. Right. I'm with a 1 now, so let me do this. I'm with a 9 now, let me do this. Right. It happens more spontaneously. And that's where the trust of 5, 6, and 7 comes in for everybody. We don't trust, so we trust our patterns. We don't trust there's anything smarter or more intelligent that could help us deal with the situation. So we just go back to what we always do.
Mm-hmm.
But all our breakthroughs, all our creative insights, all of our moments of tremendous realization in a therapy session, for example, are moments where we go beyond the stuff that we think we know.
Mm-hmm.
And I say, and again, this is something. All these things are delicate. It isn't like you go around and go, I don't know, I don't know. It's not one of those. I'm a bhakti. I don't need to know anything. It's not that. It's being receptive and curious and letting all that stuff I do know be there in the background. But I'm curious to see what's here now, what's intelligent now, what's useful now. It's a very different orientation available to everybody, but we forget.
Yeah.
Russ, you got an event coming up on Instincts, I hear.
I do indeed.
What's
Yeah.
your big window into the Instincts to pitch this?
Well, a couple of things. One is that I think the way I put it very succinctly these days, saying which one are you is the wrong question.
Mm-hmm.
We have all three clusters of instincts. All of them are in us. What's your relationship with each one of them? And there are I have learned, how can I say this nicely? I won't. People BS themselves about this more than just about any other part of the
Yes, they
Enneagram.
do.
They change the theory to make it fit who they want to think they are. The instincts are very close to the bone. They get right down into, I said, they reveal our inner nose picker that's there, whether we like that or not. It's just our animal self. But it also plays out in very specific behaviors. So we break it down into behaviors. You do that. It's not that you think about doing it, you actually do that, or you don't. And so we also are everybody's gonna get a little map, and they're gonna, with all these behaviors, they're gonna get a beautiful map that's gonna show them not just, oh, you're a self-res, oh, you're a sexual, oh, you're a social. You're gonna get a very customized map of how you sit in terms of your relationship with instinctual life. And now you got something to work with. That's my whole, and I'm coming from more the original view of all this. To go back to something else you were saying about people not being ready, in the Gurdjieff work, you never were shown your chief feature till you've been working for years, and they thought you could actually benefit from knowing it. Otherwise, you just deny it or turn it into a narcissistic supply. And I used to think that was a little negative until I saw what happened with a lot of the Enneagram. Well, we one-on-ones are deeper and more intimate than anyone else. Really? Did you check with the other people?
They just
How'd you come to
refuse
that
to.
idea?
They refuse to talk to us in the corner at the party. Is what happens.
Oh
We're
my
gonna
gosh.
fully affirm. By the way, I'm thrilled that you said it this way, because that's where TJ and I land as well in terms of talking about instincts and why we generally avoid the word subtypes. But so you're doing this event online. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's going to be online. 2026. I don't know the exact dates, but I'm sure we can send them that info. 2026 will be doing it for a few months, meeting once or twice a month and online and exploring this in depth. The other thing I'm doing next
starts in February.
There you go. See, you know better than me. When I get back from Egypt, we'll start the course. That makes sense. The other one is I'm doing a course with my colleague James Flaherty, who founded the New Ventures West Coaching School. And we've been working together, like 20 years on courses on the Enneagram and coaching. And as I've been saying, our approach is not saying, if you're with a 3, do this. If you're with a 4, do that. No, that's like the robot talking to the robot instead of the human talking to the human. So we're doing something this time. We do different themes. This time we're exploring freedom. What the heck is freedom? We have a lot of ideas about it. There's certain words that are pretty loaded. That's one of them. Love, another one. What's love? I don't know. There's songs written about that. But the whole idea of exploring freedom, what it means in therapeutic process and coaching process, what it means in terms of how we, and it relates to some of what we're saying is getting out of our own box. And so that will be another course happening in the year. And those are the two I know about at this point. There's other things coming down the turnpike. Is probably it's one of my teachers used to say, you know what the retirement plan is for spiritual teachers.
You die.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't end up in Florida or something, you know. We just have to keep going until we drop, and we'll see how that all works out. But yeah, so I'm really psyched about both those courses. I don't like to do stuff where I'm just regurgitating things I already have taught or presented. I'm more interested in exploring horizons with people, kind of like what we just did. This was really fun because we're just playing with these ideas, seeing what new angles we can see. How is this helpful? That's how I like to work with it.
Well, this is January, so that February course is starting next month. I imagine you can find all the information at russhudson.com.
That's right.
And all of that second course, scratch all my philosophical itches right there as you're talking about defining terms and talking about volition and freedom. Oh, it's good stuff.
For philosophy is sexy time.
That is what constitutes a sexy time. Well, I'm sure Russ can, or I'm sure TJ can also say how much you've meant to him, but for myself, your work has been a gift to me, has really been one of the most important things that I've come across intellectually, and has not only meant a lot to me professionally in terms of what I enjoy doing. Your work has been instrumental in making my family healthier, and that would be the highest compliment I think I could probably give anyone. So I offer it to you, and I hope that it hits you where you're at today.
Thank you, Jeff. I will receive that. I've always said, when one gives a compliment, you better listen up. It will be meaningful. Yes, thank you so much.
That's my word. You got any last words there, Teach?
It's sort of just piling on. Like I'm fine to sit here and give you compliments if you want, but the openness and the lifelong journey that you represent as a person, as a learner, as a teacher, it helps me ground this sense of what Enneagram teaching is and can be, because you're one of the top names in the teaching world right now, and you represent this model that is I hope that a lot of the people that are involved in Enneagram start to see what you represent well. And not from a necessarily even from a theory perspective, but just from the openness that you carry with you is very inspiring. And I love talking to you and hearing you talk about new things and your excitement for different perspectives and everything. So thanks for being you.
Oh, Thank you, TJ. Thank you. You know, that's what I was saying. You kind of hope that after however many years of working with this, that there's some openings, there's some shifts, and if I'm an example of that, that makes me very happy. Thank you. And it was a gas, working with you guys and wrestling with these ideas and playing around with them. This is my kind of fun too. I really enjoyed your company. Thank you.
Likewise. Well, keep us in mind if you're doing anything fun, and have empty spaces for people who bring the party. But for Russ Hudson, for TJ Wilson, I'm Jeff Cook. Who you aren't just isn't interesting.